first of all, I want to say New York Times, very famous newspaper.
Yeah.
Great, really good, really rubbish article about London, particularly the bit where they say, they talk about films.
Yeah.
Cranky critic, London, Mark Kermode. New York, Al Sharpton. Now, this is quite an interesting thing. So I think what should happen is, next time we go on holiday together, which of course we do all the time, they ought to book the Reverend Al Sharpton, civil rights leader, to be the guest critic. What do you think?
I think
he's a bit crazy.
I got tweeted that link by several people. Cranky critic, of course, I'm very happy with. But somebody...
Al Sharpton?
No, hang on. Somebody tweeted to whoever it was wrote that article, I'm sorry, I don't get the Al Sharpton gag. And the writer tweeted back, neither do I. Ask the editor. That wasn't the person we came up with.
Delighted to say we've been joined by Andrew Stanton, writer of the Toy Story trilogy, director of Finding Nemo and WALL-E, and now a live-action film, which is John Carter. Hello, Andrew. Good afternoon.
Hello, guys. How are you?
We're doing very well, thank you very much. Can you just clear something up, the title of this thing? So we were arguing about that earlier. It is John Carter. It's not John Carter of Mars.
Of Mars.
It is John Carter when you go into the theater, and that's the most I'll say.
And why has the of Mars bit gone? Because there's a title sequence sort of at the end when the credits are rolling.
This may come as a shock to you guys, but there's a large group of people that think they don't like what they would consider sci-fi. And this movie is more than just sci-fi, so we didn't want to accidentally label the movie and close it to a narrower audience than what they thought this movie was.
But Andrew, it's set on Mars. Taking Mars out.
It's not lying.
It's
not lying.
No. But
you guys have eyes. You can see the poster. You can see where it is.
Yeah. But is there honestly somewhere a focus group that thinks that if you don't call it John Carter of Mars, people won't realise that it's a science fiction
You're laughing,
film?
But that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Well, no, sadly, you guys are probably in more isolation than you realise from the rest of the public.
I know we're very isolated. That's absolutely true.
That is true. Yes.
Anyway, Andrew, it's great to have you on the show. So tell us. Let's do the plot. Let's tell us whether he's of Mars or whether he's of Earth. Tell us about John Carter, the Edgar Rice Burroughs setup, and how long you've been a fan. Well, over to you.
Okay, well, basically, this is from a book called A Princess of Mars that was written 100 years ago to this month.
If it was released now, it would just be called The Princess.
No, it would be called The. And I read it when I was 11 years old, 1976, and fell in love with the book and waited ever since then for somebody to make it so that I could buy a ticket and go see it. So I've spent 30-plus years just waiting to see it on the big screen. I had no idea that I'd ever have anything to do with it, let alone be helming it by the time now's come around.
So you approach this really as a fan first?
Big time, big time. It's what gave me the crazy willingness and courage to jump in and try live action plus animation to do this.
In my brief and inadequate synopsis of your career so far, mentioning Toy Story, Finding Nemo and WALL-E, at what stage in that, if we take that as the panorama of your career that we're aware of, when did you realise this was your gig and it was your responsibility to make a big film out of it?
Well, this is going to be a perfect example of be careful what you wish for. I was watching between the years of 2003 and 2006 this property almost get made by several directors, and I just kept hitting one development wall after another. And so just as a fan from the sidelines, I'm like, it's going to get made. I'm finally going to get to see this. And then it would fall apart. And when it finally got to Jon Favreau and fell apart, I kind of was convinced, like, it's never going to make it to the screen. I'm never going to see this. And I'm going to pass from this earth and never get to see it. And then about a week later, I just happened to be on a phone call with Disney, and I told them, look, this property is available. You guys should grab it. It's this wonderful, romantic, timeless, mythic adventure that still holds up. It could be like your 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I really think you should make it. And to convince them, like, I really meant it, I said, look, I've got 2 more years on WALL-E, but if you haven't grabbed it by then, I'm willing to like throw my hat in the ring. And that's where you got to be careful what you wish for, because a month later they bought the rights and said, do you want to do it?
So you're in the middle of WALL-E then when all this is happening?
Yeah, so I was concurrently developing this while I was making WALL-E, yeah.
So that gives an indication as to how long you're not just a fan from when you were 10 or 11. This has really been like a labour of love.
5 years to this month.
So explain just that before Mark comes in, then just tell us who John Carter is and where this adventure takes us.
He's an American Civil War veteran who suddenly finds himself mysteriously on the surface of Mars. and realizes that there's an entire culture, civilization, race, almost as if you've discovered another continent on our world that has been going on the entire time during our history, and found out that he plays a crucial role to it, that the purpose that he thought he existed on Earth for goes way beyond to a much greater purpose on that planet.
In terms of the expectations that are on you for the film now, I mean, obviously the film's been done in 3D. There have been a lot of sort of 3D failures recently. The reported budget is something like 250 million, and if I understand right, and correct me if I'm wrong, in order to make its money back, a film like that would have to therefore take twice as much at the box office. You've got these two pressures. One is it costs a lot anyway. The second is it's a high-profile 3D movie. Does that weigh heavy on you as we move towards the opening? Because you've got to hit a really big success.
No, I got to make it. It's done. I got to make it.
But is that genuinely it? You don't mind how it does now out in the out with
I can't rely on that. I mean, I haven't gone into any movie I've ever made in the hopes that it's going to please X amount of people. I've gone into it hoping that it'll satisfy me, and if I never show it to anybody else, I'll be happy. And that's how we've made every decision on every movie I've ever been on: is just do what you would privately do in your own studio, and imagine you're never going to show it to anybody else. And then on the flip side of that, it's going make sure it's something that you think that when this is all gone, when the hype's gone, however it does at the box office, because this all stuff is so temporal. 20 years from now, will somebody want to pull it off the shelf and show it to their friends? We all have movies that we want to make sure the people we really care about will see before we pass, right? And you want to be in that club. So there's a lot of short-term things you may just give up for the good of the long term. We learned that from Steve Jobs. I mean, it's like you're in it for the long haul, not the short haul.
Can I ask you something about Wall-E? You were talking before about you saying amazingly some people out there don't like science fiction, which I do find astonishing. As somebody who grew up,
I hate to crush your dreams,
no,
but there are a lot of people that don't.
I know, it's just weird, isn't it? As somebody who grew up loving Silent Running, a huge fan of Douglas Trumbull, and Silent Running was one of my favourite films. I very, very much like Wall-E, and one of the things I liked about it was it seemed, particularly in the opening sequence, it owed an awful lot to Silent Running. Was that conscious or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like I owe every sci-fi movie that's ever come out, there's a little bit of homage to all of it, because to me there was an overall not style, but just tone and feel to all the sci-fi movies that came out between the mid 60s to the early 80s, and I just wanted to capture a little of that feel again. One of the best compliments I ever got was I was at an award ceremony for Wall-E, and Laura Dern came up to me and she goes, "Hi, I don't know if you know who I am." I go, "Of course I know who you are." She goes, "My dad's Bruce Dern." I go, "I know who Bruce Dern is." She goes, "He made this film," and I'm like, "Finish your sentence." Like, "Silent Running, yes." And she goes, "Oh, he loved Wall-E," and I'm like, "Oh, that's like the biggest compliment."
That's fantastic. I think that is endorsement indeed. I think Bruce Dern loved it is what should be on every DVD and Blu-ray box from now to eternity.
Andrew, just back on the 3D thing. You didn't film it in 3D. It was kind of retrofitted with 3D. Why was that?
Well, look there's a ignorance about what 3D gives you, whether you shoot in 3D or you do it in post. And the truth is, you have an equal amount of control. It's just about money. So you're going to get a fixed amount of money to shoot with, and if you use some of that to shoot with 3D cameras, you're going to have less money in post to be able to cut out more mats and do more finessing to make it really, really be finessed and done correctly in 3D. So personally, I thought it was a smarter move, if they wanted it done in 3D, to save it all for the back end, and we'd have much more control and much more means to make it better. How
did you find this? I mean, clearly this is the question that everyone will be asking you, but making the transition from animation to real people.
See, that's the myth. Okay. I mean, everybody on the set said this to me. They go, "What's it like to work with real people?" I'm like, I have never directed a computer in my life. I've never directed an animated character in my life. All I've ever done is talk to artists. And they can, an artist is no different than, you got to remember
it must be more spontaneous, because you can do things straight away.
It's like live radio. Right? That's what it really is. But it's the same conversations. It's the same debates. It's the same stubborn my artist vision against your artist vision. I mean, I have that all the time. It's just, you're doing it under the hot sun, under duress, and you have to make the decision right away as opposed to over the course of a few weeks.
We had an ongoing conversation here at the program about whether or not Toy Story was indeed the greatest film trilogy of all time. We're trying to imagine any other trilogy. No, we're not saying this just because you're here. This is genuinely, we were trying to think of any other trilogy. Godfather 3, well, the third part lets it down. The Three Colours, blue, well, actually, I think white is a little bit all over the place. We couldn't. Lord of the Rings, the middle one is just a lot of walking between towers. And actually, we did come to the conclusion that Toy Story, the trilogy, is the most perfectly formed trilogy.
We did scare ourselves. We did actually have that conversation. We said, look, there's a lot of twos, but how small is that 3 club?
Well, I don't think there are any other 3s. I mean, I genuinely can't think of another.
We would all say Return of the King is probably the only other 3 we could think of that's really like a better third.
You mean
film.
Lord of the Rings? Yes, no, but the third is better. But the second Lord of the Rings, I mean, Toy Story, Toy Story 2. Some people would argue it's better than Toy Story 1. Lord of the Rings, the middle part is. It's walking between towers.
Back to the Future 3 was pretty good.
When they have that fight at Uriah Heep, or whatever it's called.
But Back to the Future 2 is rubbish. So that's it. It is the only perfect trilogy.
So do you agree with us, writer of the Toy Story trilogy, that the Toy Story trilogy are the greatest 3 films ever?
It's the greatest screen trilogy.
That's like boasting about your own children. I can't do that. I can't.
Okay, we'll do it for you. The Toy Story trilogy is the greatest screen trilogy. I'm sorry, and that's the beginning and end of it. Moving on.
We're having another thing that we're talking about a lot about at the moment is the Muppets film, Andrew. And a lot of our correspondents are saying that the parents are enjoying it more than the kids, particularly the younger kids who didn't grow up with the Muppets. And we had a similar conversation about Toy Story 3, that the real huge fans, the people who wrote to us in tears, that they were really beautifully moved by this thing that you created. It was the older audience as opposed to specifically the younger audience. Is that what you found?
I've never written for kids. Look at kids. Kids are already well trained to have to try to figure out stuff that they don't understand. They spend their whole day trying to figure out what mom and dad are talking about and what adults are trying to do in that. They have a really good muscle for trying to connect these dots that are very far apart. What I worry about is lazy adults that have stopped thinking and stopped getting imaginative. And so I'm always just trying to tap into just the kid in myself and go, look, I'm just going to go with my taste. I just lucked out that I'm with a bunch of people at Pixar where this is you're just seeing our natural taste. And if that turns out to be an all-ages taste, then that's what it is. But we're not guessing who's seeing the film. We're just doing what we would do even if nobody paid us. I mean, this is the music we would play if nobody else listened to it. So, oh my God, I'm sorry I'm sounding impatient, but like for 20 years I've been answering this question and going, we've never paid attention to who the audience is.
I mean, but the only difference, I suppose, would be that if the instrument that you're using to play the music you want to hear costs $250 million, there is a certain pressure to... No?
All I've ever worked on are really high-budget films with a lot of exposure.
Okay.
That's all I've ever done. So to me, that's all I know. I wouldn't know what to do with $5 million.
So, as I understand it, Andrew, you have the rights to 2 more, is that right? In terms of you've got the rights to 3 of the Edgar Rice Burroughs stories.
Yeah, so the 11 books were already written by the time I was born and I was reading these things. So it was always, to me, the Bond novels or the Harry Potter novels. That was what it was for me. So it was always an ongoing promise that you could go to another location on the planet, to another culture, and see these relationships develop. So we took these 3 and developed it like a TV season and treated this first one like a pilot, and we're just hoping that we can keep going.
What do you think you need to keep going?
You just want me to talk about money.
No,
How boring is that? It's like the most boring subject matter. I could give a crap about money.
No, I didn't mention money. No, I just want to know what would need to be in place for someone to say, "Hey, Andrew, we'd like another one."
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't. And so I always have more than one iron in the fire. So we'll just see what people want to talk about in the next couple of weeks, and then that'll pick my direction.
And what are you going to work on next?
Oh, okay. Let me just tell you, and then don't tell anybody else.
Okay.
No, it's going to be a little secret for a while.
Okay.
Sorry.
So there's something there, but you're just...
Oh, there's several things there. There's several things there. Yeah.
Can I tell you that the judge of whether or not the movie has succeeded, you need to send Bruce Dern to see it. And if Bruce Dern likes it, it's okay.
That's always going to be the stamp of approval now. Yeah.
Andrew, thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you. That's Andrew Stanton, and his movie is John Carter, not of Mars, because if it had of Mars, then people would go, that's science fiction. That's I mean, what he says is clearly true, because they'll have tested that, and there'll be people who say, I don't like science fiction, and so they won't go and see it. Whereas to me, there's a nice little kind of logo of John Carter of Mars, which you see at the end of the film, which isn't giving anything away. It's got a J and it's got an interlocking C and then an interlocking M. And you're thinking, there you go, it's John Carter of Mars.
It is interesting. A friend of mine who was in hospital, is now not in hospital. When he was in hospital, he was watching loads and loads of DVDs. And one of the things he said to me, he said, bring me anything you've got, but not sci-fi, because I don't like sci-fi. And I went, oh, come on. And he went, no, I don't. So I gave him Moon, because he'd specifically asked for not sci-fi, so I gave him and he loved it. And he loved it. He loved it.
Yeah, but your sick friend said, "Don't give me." It's like saying,
Colin
"I don't like grapes."
Liked Moon.